Well, we still have the book of condolence that has been opened, and please make sure that if you're an organization or an individual, you can still pass through the reception of Joy FM and pay your homage to our own late Kwabna Kwejo Asaribafwe Champon Kaba. And please may so rest in peace for all the things that we have to see. You can get interactive on Facebook, JoyNews on TV. It's a page where we also stream live. We also have a Twitter handle, JoyNews on TV. Please touch base with that. Let us know what you think about many of the issues and subjects of discussion. I have in the studio Mohammed Abdul Aziz. He's a member of parliament for Myong. Good morning to you, Mohammed.
Good morning, Roland.
How are you?
I'm good.
Did you attend a post-budget workshop?
Yes, I did.
So a couple of your friends told me that it was held in Kofodia.
Yes, yes, it was held in Kofodia over the weekend. Okay. Yeah.
And we also have another member of parliament for Sekendi, Bobo, known to his friends, Andre Japa Mesa. He's also a lawyer by profession. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.
Were you able to attend a day or two of the workshop?
Unfortunately, I was out of the jurisdiction.
Yeah, you went
over the weekend.
Okay. All right.
So I
welcome.
received the sad news of my good friend Kaba's death.
Yes, because you're always on this program.
Yes, I was a regular feature on Mondays.
On Mondays,
together with my very good friend Edo Asare.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very, very, very sad.
Yeah,
sad.
I saw you doing one of the pictures. I think wailing.
Yeah.
Because crying is an underestimation.
Yeah.
It was wailing.
May his soul rest in peace.
May his soul rest in peace. It's a very sad event for all of us, especially here at Multimedia. What you say?
Yeah. I said our sincere and deepest condolence, and I will share in your pain and grief. It's a loss not just to Multimedia or the media fraternity, but the entire country. Irreplaceable. But I'm sure we can pull through.
Yeah, he served Ghana's political landscape well. He was very fair because I was a regular listener to his show. I'm always a regular listener to his show.
And you normally pick some of the breaking news
yes.
on his show, late afternoon. One of the hottest afternoon political talk shows that you can talk of in this country. And it was virtually a point where some of us would pick the breaking news, get the views of political parties in this country.
Yes.
And so it's not just a loss to Multimedia, but all of us as a country.
May he so rest in peace. Yeah. But yesterday, news was trickling in that apparently members of parliament had condemned the killing of suspected criminals by the police, and we're told that they have, as a result, called for a redefinition of the use of minimum force by the police to prevent use of the constitutional provision. But it was in context. There was an incident that happened in Kumasi, I believe around the Asawase area. That would be in the Asante Mampong area or the... And we're told that the police tried to use what they call the minimum force. It resulted in the death of 2 people. The MP for the area, who is also the minority chief whip, Al-Haji Mohammed Mubarak Muntaka, said that the police in Kumasi gunned down the 2 suspected armed robbers, Lukman Mohammed and Aoud Osman, who allegedly attempted to flee when they were aiding the police to carry out a search for weapons they used for their operations in Kumasi. They were said to have jumped from a story building where they had hidden a pistol that they had used for separate robbery operations in the Kumasi metropolis. And, well, we're told that they were taking them round. Go and show me where you have hidden the weapon. And thereafter, I think they tried also to be smart. So the police didn't want to be outsmarted. They tried to use minimum force, but 2 of them were gunned down. They are dead. And members of parliament are also not happy about the way the police go about undertaking their duties. Let's take a comment or two. I'll start with you, Lawyer Mesa.
Well, I guess good morning is in order. To yourself and my very good friend Mohammed here to my right, and of course your cherished viewers, particularly my constituents in Sekendi. Hopefully I'll be joining them this coming weekend. Police brutality, it's not new, rather unfortunately. And I think we should not wait for incidents like this to befall us before we as it were, call on our institutions of state, particularly the police, to abide by the rules. I mean, it's unfortunate the death that was occasioned over the past couple of days. And I think that the call is in the right direction, being made by particularly the Member of Parliament for the area whose constituents were affected. You know, we have had cause time without number to, as it were, even in instances of the vigilante groups, zeal with which we all expect the police to act in arresting and prosecuting them. It's not what is happening. We tend to play politics with it and attribute their inaction to their desire or quest to serve some political forces, which I don't believe is the case. You know, the police is a state institution which ought to, at all times, carry out their duties without fear or favor, so that we, the citizenry, would be confident in their ability to offer us the protection that the Constitution enjoins them to offer the people of Ghana. So I think that, and of course, in doing so, they ought to be even-handed in the application of what we know to be called the minimum force, because they are entrusted with that kind of power that you and I don't have, to enable them exercise their functions in a manner that is appropriate. But it ought to be done within some rules. I heard the JoyNews report this morning, where family members of the deceased were practically crying foul that, look, this was not a situation where these gentlemen were, as it were, seeking to bolt from the police, hence the need to apply minimum force. And as to whether shooting to kill really amounts to minimum force is another matter. I mean, these are people who are, no matter how you see them, be they criminals or not, are valuable to their families, I'm sure. Of course, I mean, if they were my family members, I would definitely not be excited. You know, that's why we have institutions where we send them to exact some punishment of them when they commit crimes, of course, unless, of course, offenses that they've committed warrant the death penalty. And even that ought to be a process of courts having tried and found them guilty to pass sentences on them. But to just shoot them, you know, without justifiable cause, I think is not in order. And it's about time that we all, as a people, together, devoid of the usual politicking, to call on the police authorities to rein their men in at all times, yes, carry out their duties, but in a manner that will, you know, engender confidence of the Ghanaian public in the police service.
A comment on this too, Abdul.
Roland, I totally share in the sentiments expressed by my colleague lawyer, that the police will need to conduct themselves in a manner that would engender public confidence and cooperation. Since this story broke out, I'm aware that the Member of Parliament for Asawase and the Chief Whip on the minority side has filed a question for the Interior Minister to appear before the House to answer questions in respect of the circumstances and which these gentlemen were gunned down. I'm sure in a week or two the Minister would be appearing before Parliament to answer those questions. The minority leader himself have had cause to complain on this matter on the floor, and so let's wait and see what the Minister responsible for Interior would say, because the Minister will take briefing from the Ghana Police Service to be able to also appear properly before the House. And so until the Minister appears before Parliament, we are handicapped to comment extensively on the matter, except to call on the police. You see, the word minimum force. It is relative and subjective. And so they must be mindful that to do a proper policing of this country, they will need the confidence and the cooperation of the Ghanaian public. And all their actions must be intended to achieve same. And so let's wait and see what happens when the minister appears before Parliament. But even before that, we express our sincere condolences and sympathies to the families of those lives, and wishing them they should take heart and they should cooperate with the state institutions to find a lasting solution to this matter, so that an incident of that nature does not occur again, not just in Kumasi, but anywhere in this country.
All right. Yeah. But let's move on. We've had some 400 voter chiefs back OT region. We'll play a story in which we've had some appearances before the commission. And so if that story is ready, perhaps maybe we can also apprise ourselves about the story on the demarcation of the regions. And at the end of the day, we know that it's something both the MPP and NDC all promised, but I'm sure it's got its premise on a certain advocacy or perhaps some agitations, if I can call it so, from some sectional heads within some of those operational areas or those jurisdictions. So, but we'll take the story and then we'll comment on the sitting of the committee itself, headed by Justice Brobe, and then we'll have some discussions on it.
The northern part of Volta region, now seeking to be a region on its own, used to be part of the northern region before Ghana became independent in 1957. It was during the carving out of the Upper West and Upper East regions that was added to the Volta region. The chiefs, supported by some of the prominent residents of towns in that part of the region, namely Kwasa, Kajebi, Buem, Kratin Chomro, Jasikain, are the ones pushing for the creation of the new region. Their main arguments, according to Secretary of the Joint Consultative Committee on the proposed OT region, Kweku Adia, is that development has eluded them for far too long.
Of cocoa production in the area from colonial times to date, and you go to see that there is nothing there, you weep from our people. You weep. You weep. So basically, when we say we want development, we want jobs, we want our people also to be placed in good positions. You know, when you hold good positions, top positions, you have influence, and you can help the young ones, the youth. If you don't have people from there, how do you do it? We are not dealing in hypotheses. We are dealing with facts. What all that we are saying is speculation. What is the evidence? It is only for one reason. The place has been left undeveloped. It contains population of over 700,000, substantial number, and they are not developed. They are not getting, you know, like the examples I've mentioned. So many examples, you see. And normally, it comes to a time you can say we will not bear it again. You see, we are not a violent type. That is why we want to go the constitutional and legal means. You see.
Chairman of the Commission, Justice Stephen Alan Brobe, urged all petitioners to let the supreme interest of Ghana inform their pursuit.
This is the first time that the provisions of Article 5 of the 1992 Constitution on the creation or alteration of a region have been invoked. There is therefore a duty on all of us to ensure that we chart a course that is ultimately in the best interest of our people.
Petitioners from the Bunahafo region are expected to appear before the Commission on Thursday.
Well, the Commission will continue sitting, but I have to start with you, Layamesa. At the end of the day, we know that it's a commitment made by both parties, I believe, prior to the elections, but it's also premised on a long-standing agitation.
Absolutely. I mean, I recall quite clearly that the MPP's commitment was to do the Western North.
Only?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
It was rather the NDC that promised that they were going to do, I believe, 5.
Yes, I remember. I remember the flag bearer had a whole session on.
Then again, I mean, when we came to power, it was obvious to His Excellency the President that beyond Western region, several other regions or several other people within some of the regions felt the need, because of the skewed nature of our development, for a region to be created for them as well. Of course, I believe that petitions were made by chiefs in the northern region. Some were made by chiefs in the Wrong Harbour region. I believe also the Volta region. So, of course, that informed the need, because of the various petitions and the constitutional imperative in Article 5, which lays out an elaborate process for the creation, alteration, consolidation, if you like, of new regions. The setting up of a ministry or a minister at the office of the presidency to coordinate all the petitions that had been submitted by various chiefs across the country, to make recommendations that then led to the setting up of the commission in accordance with Article 5 of the Constitution, for the processes to commence. I think that, you know, it's not for nothing that Constitution itself provided for a process for the creation of new regions. So clearly, the framers anticipated that someday in the future, beyond 1992, as has been the case in the past, because Ghana, at independence, I believe, was constituted of only 3 or so regions, if you like, the Northern Territories, Ashanti, and then the Fanti, of course, then the Volta Togoland.
Transvolta Togoland.
Transvolta Togoland. Subsequently, in the 70s, I believe, additional regions were created, and also in the 80s. That was the last time that
you had the split of the upper region.
Absolutely. And so when the framers of the Constitution were drafting it, they had it firmly in their minds that it was entirely possible that someday beyond 1992, there may be the need for the creation of new regions. And we as political parties, reflecting the aspirations of our people, necessarily ought to respond in a manner that will meet their expectations. We know the impact of what the creation of new administrative districts or regions make in our development agenda. And so I believe that has largely been the underlying reason for the call that is being made, because I am from 2nd B, clearly the regional capital. If you go to the northern part of Western region, the infrastructure there is not as much as
the northern part of the Western region.
You know, so they were the most visible or vocal in the quest for an administrative region to be created for them, you know, because accessing services in 2nd D largely was a difficulty, and thankfully I did my national service in Sevioso.
Way up Sevioso.
When I was only 19 years.
Way up Sevioso.
Way up Sevioso. You know, and it took 12 hours to get there, you know.
At the time.
Absolutely. Of course, now, because of improvements
in road infrastructure,
it's a much more shorter journey. But I can understand why people across the country want administrative regions to be created. I've heard some talk of that leading to some division or not fostering the unity that we all crave for as a country. I don't think that that is the case at all. I mean, even as Ghana is presently constituted, I have many good friends from several parts of the country. I mean, I think that the creation of new regions is purely for faster development across the country, and particularly
as far as the pace of the development.
Absolutely, yes, because I believe that over time, all the roads in Ghana will be done. As to when is another matter, but if regions are created, new districts are created, the budgetary allocation that will go specific to a smaller geographical location will enable them accelerate the growth of those localities or communities. So I think that particularly that's to our own party's desire for an inclusive, even development of our country. It's important that some of these things are done, these regions are created. And so, good call. I hope that we can go through the constitutional process successfully, and the people of Ghana would throw their support behind the creation of the new regions.
Right. It's not really the people of Ghana throwing this, it's the people of those. Because according to 5.5 of the Constitution, you need about 50% of voters within that area to go to the polls, and even 80% of those that went to vote for.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's a tall order, but clearly achievable.
Right.
And so I believe that as the process evolves, we'll definitely get there.
Abdul Mohammed, we have 6 proposed new regions that are on the table.
What, 5?
Well, I'm reading that 6 now.
I think it's 5.
I think it's 5 because Western region, Volta region, Northern region,
and then
and Brunafo region.
Yeah.
So we're even talking about 4 here.
But they're going to be split, you know.
So well, I from the last time I checked, I think they were talking about some 5 new regions, and like Council indicated, our Constitution clearly stipulates the procedure to adopt and the creation or altering or measuring of regions, and what is going on is clearly a constitutional provision. Several reasons have been assigned for the creation of these regions. Like you indicated earlier, in the run-up to the 2016 general elections, and clearly captured in the manifestos of both the NDC and the NPP, creation of new regions were expressed. In the case of the NPP, like Council indicated, they had committed themselves to the creation of a region out of the existing Western region. And I think the NDC had proposed about five regions.
Not about, exactly 5.
Exactly. So having one power, I'm sure they have come to the realization that the position taken earlier by us would be the better way to go. And so they have now moved from
you swept me on that one.
From 1 to 5.
You're going to oppose it.
Oh no! I mean, you just going to oppose things for the purposes of opposing.
You swept me on that one.
No, he did.
Because prior to the submission, prior to us coming on air. But anyway, this is your formal. Yes, okay. This is your formal submission.
That was off record.
This is your formal submission.
Formal submission. That one was informal. And so, like I indicated, there was even a story where the president went to the Western region and had promised to create that new region.
He did that during the campaign.
Within 6 months.
Is that what he said?
Yes, within 6 months.
I thought he said that he would begin the facilitation more like. He didn't say that because I think the president is a lawyer, and so knows that by the time you create a commission, by the time you create a commission,
being a lawyer,
and then you have a referendum or a plebiscite.
Are in a campaign mood, and they go to the Western region. They want to appeal to the people of the Western region.
I was with
sometimes
the
lawyer blood. Oh,
you were?
I was.
Okay. You see, I'm saying
every time that he came to the region.
That is not the issue on table for discussion.
All the way to second
council, whether you were with the president
or not. He made some submissions
when he was campaigning in your area. Is not the issue.
I said the entire region.
Well, you see, what I'm saying, that is not the issue on discussion.
Yes, please.
What I'm telling you is that the
He made
president
some
has committed
submissions and
himself
promises to them.
to the creation of the region within 6 months. Like you indicated, he's an astute lawyer, and I'm sure when we are in the campaign mood sometimes, the law in us vanishes. But that was just on the lighter note. Like I said, it's a constitutional process that they are going through. Several reasons have been assigned for the creation of the regions. And for me, I'm yet to understand properly the reason behind the creation of a region. When you look at the northern region, for instance, right from the...
Is there an advocacy at any level within the territory of the northern region for any breakup?
Of course.
Well, any division?
Not any division as in...
As any demarcation? As
well,
creating,
the details...
creating a region out of the north?
Exactly.
Are there groups like that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
But there are moves as part of this hearing. The northern region,
really?
The division of the northern region is part of the...
It's part of it.
It's
so we have the northern, Bonahafo, Volta, Western.
And Western region.
Okay.
But I suspect they may want to create 2 new regions out of the existing northern region, making it 3. I'm not too sure of the details, and I don't want to commit myself.
Ashanti is big. They can divide.
And sometimes that is one of the issues that I would come to. You see, the regional coordinating councils. When you create a region, what you establish is a regional coordinating council. All that regional coordinating councils do is to coordinate the assemblies. They don't do any development projects at all. Regional coordinating councils supervise the districts or the assemblies. And so when you argue that you are creating regions to facilitate rapid development of an area,
true, because you make resource allocations too.
You see, when you create,
it makes a lot of sense that way.
I'm making a point. Just allow me to learn, and maybe you'll get the drift of my argument. When you create district assemblies, currently as we speak, there is an LI before Parliament seeking to create 38 new assemblies. No. When you do that,
no, let's be accurate. Okay, it's elevation of some existing assemblies and creation of new ones.
I agree with you. And so when you have
those that are district to become municipal,
and then so when you have a correction, I have no problem with it. For instance,
and then additional ones will be created.
Exactly.
Yes.
So just as the
at the end of it, that's what he said.
Lawyer, take it easy. I have yielded to your correction, and so you don't need to provide.
But I think it's more like 38 new ones have been created.
I mean, well,
that's not what
don't let us belabor that point.
I mean,
for instance, I'm aware that Saflugun and Tong is currently one district. They are being split into 2. Yes. And so whether we like it or not, there's a creation of new
is it under your constituency?
Assemblies. No. And so what I'm saying is when you create new assemblies, you allocate resources to them through the District Assembly Command Fund, DDF, and other development projects. In fact, state institutions are then required to go and establish offices in those assemblies. And so what I know is that it is the creation of assemblies that would facilitate the rapid development of an area. And I've told you that per our constitution and practice, all that the regional coordinating councils do is to coordinate. And so I have a struggle to come into terms or understanding of how the creation of a region would facilitate development. Some argue that it is the purpose is to further decentralize and bring administration closer to the people. The argument that also comes is that if you think that somebody, a regional minister in Tamale, cannot have effective supervisory role over assemblies such as Tatale, Pandai and Co. that are very far from Tamale. Why? The president is in Accra. And he has supervisory role even up to Tatale and Pandai. And so I'm yet to understand the main reason why. You see, some of these things, some of these agitations for creation of new regions has some ethnic undertones that we must be very, very careful in dealing with. Because in whatever we do, we must be seeking to preserve the unity and peace of this country. When people make demands because they think that they are a very large ethnic group and want to have a region on their own, I don't think those ones should be the basis for the creation of new regions. Let us see what the commission would come out with, because the commission at the end of the day would give a report to the president. I'm sure the president referred the matter to the commission because the Council of State has advised so. That's what the Article 5 says. And so let us wait and see what the report of the commission would be. And then, if the commission finds favor, with the cases made by the petitioners, then the matter will be referred to the Electoral Commission. The issue that we'll have to start thinking about that could raise some legal issues, and I'm happy I'm on the platform with a lawyer, has to do with the referendum, which says that 50% of the registered voters in the affected area must turn out to vote at least, and that 80% must support the creation of the new region. Now, 50% of what population? For instance, when you take northern region, they are talking of the creation of Eastern Corridor.
50% of voter.
I just want to take
the northern.
I want to take the northern region for example, where they are seeking to create what they call the Eastern Corridor. So when they say 50% of the registered voters, are they referring to 50% of the anticipated region, or 50% of the entire northern region? This is an issue that I think that we should.
Of the entire region.
That's my position, but I've listened to people from your side
who are also saying different.
Who thinks that it must be limited to the anticipated new region and not the entire region. Because
I mean, the Constitution is clear on that. I mean,
that's
we can verify.
That's my position. I think that it should be extended to the entire existing region. Some have argued that it should be.
I think that's what a Constitution.
Exactly. And so these are issues that we should start averting our minds to. But all in all, Dan Bocho is is a very smart person when it comes to organization, and someone who knows the terrain of this country. And so I'm not surprised that he was kept in that area to be able to do the backstage works for the creation of those regions. I serve on the local government committee of parliament, and so I'm sure most of the issues that has to do with the creation of the new regions will be referred to our committee. Ordinarily, this matter should have been handled by the Minister for Local Government, you know that. But when you have an elephant government, you can only expect an elephant size of ministers and deputy ministers. So to create a ministry just for the creation of regions, that will probably expire within a year or two, and then that ministry is scrapped. I'm sure a special purpose vehicle. A deputy minister could have been charged. A deputy minister at the local government ministry could have been charged with the mandate to supervise and shepherd the creation of the new regions. But you can understand, just for men and women.
You are mischievous.
God bless and girls.
You are mischievous.
Oh, but really, also, I mean, they are noted for it, and it doesn't surprise me.
You are making use of my comments.
You see, don't ride on his back.
Did you listen?
Don't ride on his back.
Did you listen to him carefully?
Don't ride on his back.
Yes, I did. You mean the import of what he said?
You heard him.
Yes. But is it true that it could have been handled by the Ministry of Local Government?
It's true.
And
even by Deputy Minister, yes.
And so what's the mischief?
Anybody, yeah.
Anybody.
So what's the mischief?
Because the Constitution doesn't say that the Ministry of
But the
Local Government
prerogative is the President.
Absolutely.
He
can reorganize the ministry as and when he decides.
Nobody says you are challenging it.
And so I'm only telling you what I think.
I did.
One breath. This is not a good idea because
Council, this is unfair.
As far as you are
only raised legitimate questions. No.
You say personally you don't see. You say personally you don't see.
No.
Because to maintain the unity, to maintain the unity, to maintain the homogeneity. You didn't use it though.
Be very fair to me. Be very fair to me. Be very fair to me. What I'm saying is that
I'm supposed to be neutral.
Exactly, and I believe you are. I have no doubt. To.
In one breath,
in your. But
in one breath,
Council, get it easy.
It doesn't really impact the development of the country.
Dispute what I have said. Is that true or not?
That's what you said.
Is that true or not?
That's true.
So
forget it.
So what is it?
And you see, in another breath, the MPP has realized that it was a good idea that we have adopted from them. So question is, what informed your party's commitment in the manifesto to create 5 new regions?
What do you think informed their commitment? It's because of their long-standing agitations, right?
Of course. And
Council, debate the substance of my submission.
We are debating the substance of your submission.
Debate the substance of it.
Which clearly is contradictory.
So, what you need to speak to is whether you facilitate development by creation of assemblies or regions.
So, that's
the core issue.
In effect,
in all that I have said,
because it doesn't lead to the development.
So are you admitting that? So are you admitting that the creation of regions will not facilitate rapid development. You are admitting to it.
I'm not admitting to anything. I'm just saying, pointing out the inconsistencies or the inherent contradiction in your own submission.
No, is it true that you promised 1 year and now you are doing 5?
Yes, we did.
Exactly.
And
so,
you promised 5. Yet you sit
exactly.
and say that the creation of the regions in itself don't amount to much.
Well,
you see,
Council, you can do far better than
is that not what you said?
No. I have only raised questions. Look, when you say you are creating new regions to facilitate development, I'm telling you,
inform your party's decision to create 5 in your manifesto.
So you see, so you are now changing the argument to what informed our decision.
No, he's not changing the argument.
He is.
He's saying that he says that he says that if that is your argument, then what may have informed your party?
That becomes the second leg of the argument. Oh. But the first argument I have made is that you don't facilitate development with the creation of regions.
That's your position. That's your personal position.
I mean, unless
not your party's position.
Unless you disagree with me.
And
do you disagree with me on that note?
And you
think for me, personally, I think that both ways works. You can coordinate development without not creating a new region, and then you can also. But the thing is that
the preference for your party was 5
per our pattern of development and resource allocation. This is the best way.
I'm not doing this MPP proposed 1, NDC proposed 5. I've only raised a question of how do we facilitate development. Is it by the creation of assemblies?
I think they are changing your...
I'm not.
You articulated quite strongly that because your manifesto was rejected, okay?
Well, which platform was that?
On this set?
Which platform?
On this set, lawyer. On this set. Lawyer, on this set. On this set.
That was off record.
But he
did that off record on an off record platform.
But is it true our manifesto was there or not? It was rejected. You guys were elected.
But not everything
the Ghanaian public bought into your manifesto. So now we are subjecting your manifesto to scrutiny. The standard today is your manifesto and not ours.
Does it?
We said we were going to create 1. Why are we creating 5?
Did you say that or not?
Okay. But at the end, let me ask some. Let's wrap up on this discussion. Substantive. At the end of the day, we know that when you create new regions, you tend to move resources here and there. But the concerns will be that then kind of, in some aspects, destroys the homogeneity and even the intent of the Constitution of making sure that we live well with all and sundry. Because, for example, in the Volta region, we have the Anglos, we have the other Vedome, we have the Guans, and we have those of nothing extraction.
Submissions, I addressed this quite clearly. That as far as I'm concerned, Mohammed is here. He's from the north. I'm from the western region.
Yeah.
But we are friends.
Very good friends, of course.
Of course.
So you're saying it doesn't matter?
It's purely administrative.
Yeah.
To facilitate the inclusive growth of the entire country.
Now, no more development, inclusive growth.
No, you see, but the growth is development oriented.
Is it possible also?
We all know.
Is it also possible, perhaps maybe the NDC is afraid that you may score some political points out of it?
I do not, you see,
because if there are long-standing agitations and we've had governments in the past that have not ceded
going back into the 70s.
Yes, but
so,
but at the end of the day, so if it's an Akufo-Addo government that agreed to and did that, you may score some political points. You may use it on the campaign platform.
Of course, I mean,
you're trying to be evasive. You're trying to be evasive.
So,
you're a good lawyer.
Are you admitting that you want to process that matter?
No. I'm not.
The man says that you would use it on political platforms for
I said there could be a possibility. I didn't say
yes, of course.
They will. I didn't say they will.
And he says, of course, they would.
No, it's a possibly.
No, he said they would.
Oh, possibly.
There are political dividends.
Why not?
To be earned from the creation,
alongside
to reflect the aspirations of the people. Why? So you will spit out honey and ask for.
So in the long run, you see.
No, I'm asking.
In the long run, you are seeking to achieve political advantage out of it.
It comes with the territory, of course.
I just want you to admit that what you are doing is that you are seeking.
The NDC's record for the election 2016.
That you are seeking to.
So was that the import of your putting it in?
You have just said on this platform.
I'm saying that
you will take advantage of it politically.
No, I'm not going to bury my head.
I want you to emphasize that, so that tomorrow when somebody goes political on that matter, you know that you set the pace.
political dividend in the creation.
But there will be. You are admitting.
Potentially.
So
and
is saying that the President Nana is seeking to achieve political ends.
Let's
the case of the new regions.
You can twist my words out of context. The Ghanaian people
said.
So the two of you. So we're going to have. That's what you have said. We're going to have a referendum.
Yes.
And it's going to. Ideally, we need to have at least 50% of registered voters there, based on the register from the last compiled register, and at least out of that number that will go to the polls, we need 80% of those votes to agree.
Yes.
Yes. So it will be a yes or no situation.
Yeah,
but there would have been some public education from the electoral committee. The NCC, they have been involved in all this. Right.
And I'm sure even political parties
will also be involved.
Would be involved. We all have a duty to.
What would be your position?
My personal position?
No. The party's
I don't speak for the party, but I don't think that the party would have anything against it after all. We even expressing in our manifesto. I was only raising questions.
Now you are being contradictory. But let's go. That's okay.
Roland, well, if you think so, that's fine. But
you said your manifesto was thrown away, so I thought that maybe you will not ascribe. You will not ascribe to the content of the manifesto.
Roland, just take time and listen to me. I am not condemning the.
No, you mean I don't listen to you when you speak?
Roland. Don't put words into my mouth.
All right, so let's move on. Let's discuss the budget. Did you attend the post-budget workshop of parliamentarians?
Let me make this point very clear.
Yes, please.
I am not against the creation of the 5 regions.
Okay.
I'm saying that it was even captured in the manifesto of the NDC.
Good.
But that does not mean that we should not ask the very relevant questions. The first question the first question I ask, I'm not doing the NDC MPP thing. The first question I ask,
I believe that
what is the purpose of the creation?
Well enough.
What is the purpose of the creation? To facilitate a development as we are being told. And I've told you what to do if you want to facilitate a development. It's to create new assemblies. That's where I come from. I'm not saying it is bad to create new regions.
All right.
Let's interrogate the issue.
A senior fellow.
So to think that I'm
it's good that you, the MPs, now the budget is before you and all that. Have you approved it?
Oh, not yet.
Okay. You have to debate it.
Yeah, of course, after the debate.
Okay. So a senior research fellow at the Institute for Fiscal Studies wants government to reduce the number of development initiatives it is pursuing and focus on only a few within a particular framework. And, well, we've had a number of institutions analyze the budgets. We had PricewaterhouseCoopers. We also have Deloitte also making submissions, also captured on myjoyonline.com. Now, Dr. Said Boache says the Nanado-led administration risks accomplishing little if its capital-intensive projects like Plantain for Food and Jobs, Zongo Development Fund, $1 million per constituency, free SHS, etc., are not rolled out gradually. And we have a rollout of all these. But that's why we have an expenditure, budgetary expenditure. But let me pick your mind on this.
Well, I think that everybody has a right to critique the budget. And so in that regard, I do not fault Dr. Boache at all. Of course, he feels that...
He's not saying the initiatives are bad.
Yes, I agree. I agree with him. And of course, nobody can argue that the initiatives that are contained in the 2018 budget, which essentially is a follow through from the 2017 budget.
They are Sempa budget.
They are bad at all.
This one is Christian.
I don't recall the christening, but I mean...
putting Ghana back to work.
No, there's a Jumapa budget. Yeah.
Those,
you see, we are the same people, but we have different ways of looking at things. This government feels strongly, having evaluated all the options that are available to us, the level of development that we have achieved as a country, and is of the view that putting resources in these areas, and I cannot for one think that the resources that many of our young people who come out of school. And I've seen, for instance, the Deloitte document, which makes essentially recommendations as to how to achieve some of the the initiatives that are contained in the budget. And I think that they are all welcome. The community management team, which has consistently adopted an open door policy of listening, I believe would take all these suggestions on board. I have consistently maintained that we are in this boat together, this boat called Ghana. We either sail together or sink together. Constructive criticism is good for every government. Of course, in times past, when questions were posed, people failed to respond and answer.
And which questions are those?
Oh, you forget the 170 questions that His Excellency the Vice President.
No, yeah, I think there were 173 questions.
Yeah, you see, my friends in the NDC did not get the import because, as always, wait.
The budget, leave
yes,
the NDC
out. But what's the reason for us going? I'm telling you that we have the men who are going to take the concerns that are being raised by all these people, okay? Because we listen. I have said that wisdom, it does not reside in the head of one man. So yes, criticize, but constructively. When they raised, the vice president, then candidate, raised 170 questions.
Those were questions.
They were pure politics.
Those were questions.
Oh, why? Roland, did you see the questions?
Those were questions.
You thought that they were pure politics. And so you did not even consider them in your management of
okay, what you consider 173 questions? Absolutely.
We are saying that, yes, constructive criticism are welcome. People, think tanks from all over who are making recommendations on the budget, going through the debate in Parliament.
This one, they are not political, though. PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte.
Yes, but the NDC can also critique the budget. But rather than do that, they held a press conference.
Speak to the budget.
One press conference per week.
Speak to the budget.
One press conference per week, and came out even before the budget was read with some outrageous comments that all turned out not to be the case.
Like what?
Oh, you forget the taxes on what you call it?
Mobile money.
Mobile money that they said was going to be continued.
But if Ken Oforiatta had introduced it, wouldn't have been bad. At least we can recoup enough to fund free SHS. Because in the same budget, we're supposed to have a voluntary fund.
Government that thinks that some nuisance taxes does not...
But you want to create a voluntary fund for people to dip...
but people make voluntary contributions every day.
To where?
To education, to health.
Where?
Which partners, where do those monies, are they not voluntary? Are they
so that's the target.
I'm asking. People in this country contribute every day. They make donations across. So if government wants to set up a vehicle to coordinate,
I think that's just underestimating.
It's not underestimation. You leave them.
Go ahead. I'll have my turn.
To make comments that does not add any value to the discussion.
And
did you hear them say that? Did you hear them say that they are now going to court to ask the court to strike out the budget? Such laughable propositions, and that the Minister of Finance, the budget that he presented to Parliament, the media review was not approved by Parliament, and that because of that it is unconstitutional. Can you imagine? What was the issue? The Public Finance Management Act requires the finance minister to present a review of the budget by the 31st of July in every year. Okay, section 28, I believe. Now, the minister presented the budget for 2017 in March, but consistent with the law, he had to come back in July to present a mid-year review to give indication as to where all the targets were, whether we are on track in the projections for year end 2018. And if he desires that the supplementary budget be done, bring the supplementary budget for approval. He presents the review and says that, look, my targets that I set from what I've done between now and from January and end of July, I'm not going to achieve the revenue targets. And so my expenditure targets that you gave me a ceiling, I'm not going to achieve the ceiling. I'm not going to spend as much money as you gave me the right to spend. You say you should have come for approval to spend less. Why? If I give you 100 Ghana cedis to go to the market to go and buy goods worth up to 100, and I go and I make a saving of 20, do I have to come and tell you that, well, when I went to market, I got the items at 80 cedis, so give me approval to go and buy them for 80 cedis? Is it not the case that it's only when you exceed the 100 that I gave you that you have to come back and tell me that, well, I gave you 100 or you gave me 100? And that when I went, I got the item for 120, so I need approval to spend additional 20 cedis of your money. Yet, they sit and say they are going to court for what? Completely needless. And I'm asking that, just as the IFS and the Deloitte and Co. have done, do the same. Offer constructive criticism and stop this cheap politicking that is not going to help you as a party.
He's done.
Please, yeah, he's done. So wrap up for us.
Oh, after all this time that
I'm sorry, my time is up. So just wrap up. Wrap up in about 3 minutes.
Roland. Anyway, you see, Council, when you are asked to speak to the budget, speak to the figures and the policy proposals and stop the NDC thing. It's not about NDC and
what was his question?
It's about the budget.
What was his question?
It's about the
IFS.
Exactly.
Exactly. That the budget has been loaded with too many zongo for development. Okay, you're taking his time. It's okay.
Press conference of the NDC.
He has only 3 minutes.
I mean, 3 minutes. Well, you see, when you come to Parliament to present a budget with a revenue projection of 51 billion, when indeed you are aware that even the revenue projection of 41 billion that you made for 2017, you are unable to attain that.
How much they get?
As at the end of September, they had realized just about 31 billion Ghana cedis.
What percentage?
Well, that's about some shortfall of 10 billion Ghana cedis.
That's not true.
Oh.
Okay,
continue. That is not true.
Continue.
That's a palpable falsehood.
Continue.
How much do you realize?
I'll give you the figures now.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Continue.
And so, when you come with a revenue projection that is unattainable and realistic, and you are told it is unrealistic, you must be humble to admit it. When you came with a revenue projection of 41 billion, we warned you on the floor of Parliament that that was not attainable, especially when you were withdrawing and reducing taxes. We told you were being populist and you were still engaged in a campaign year.
Is that the same thing that's happening in the new budget?
Exactly. Today, you are now projecting to mobilize a revenue of 51 billion with an expenditure of 62 billion. If you are unable to attain the 51 billion revenue projection, what you end up doing is that you compromise capital expenditure and you compromise goods and services, because there's very little you can do with compensation, there's very little you can do with interest on loans, and so you end up compromising capital expenditure.
Because those ones are recurrent, you can't do anything.
Exactly. Which has to do with the expansion of our economy and the growth of the economy. You pay people and yet will not provide them with the tools to work. But let me tell you, is it not interesting today that the Minister Kenoforiata comes to Parliament and he's very silent on the public debt stock and only talking about the debt to GDP?
Why?
When he was so loud.
What is the public debt stock?
In March, when he came to the floor and said we left a huge debt of 122 billion. When he came back for the review, he repeated that. Today, Minister Kenoforiata is not bold enough to tell us what our debt stock is.
I wanted to speak on this.
Oh, Roland, I feel you've given my colleague a lot of time to speak onto the budget, even though I feel he abused the time. I mean, just 3 minutes to respond to
Abdulaziz, Mohammed Abdulaziz, a member of parliament from Mion, and he's been in the studio with Andrew Ejapa Mesa Bobo, who is a lawyer, but also a member of parliament for Sekendi. Thank you for joining me, the two of you.
Thank you, Roland.
All right.